The monkey's paw. Be careful what you wish for. You may receive it. That is the simple message of the short story, The Monkey's Paw, written by W. W. Jacobs. It's one of the great old horror stories that has embedded itself into modern pop culture. The original story begins with the White family, Mr. White, Mrs. White, and their adult son, Herbert, spending a quiet evening at home when they are visited by Sergeant Major Morris, a family friend who has served in India. Over dinner, he pulls out a shriveled monkey's paw and tells them it has been enchanted by a fakir to grant 3 wishes. There is, however, a catch. The paw grants your wishes, yes, but in the worst way possible. There are hellish and ironic consequences for those who use it, as a punishment for messing with fate. Morris is so disturbed by the thing that he throws it into the fireplace. But Mr. White, being a horror story protagonist, snatches it back out. At first, the family treats it like a joke. Herbert, the son, laughs it off and suggests wishing for £200 to pay off the mortgage. It's such a small, ordinary wish. What could possibly go wrong? Mr. White makes the wish, and the paw moves in his hand like a snake. The next day, Herbert goes to work at the factory. Later, a company representative arrives at the house with dreadful news. Herbert has been killed in an accident, horribly mangled by the machinery. The company denies responsibility, but offers the family £200 in compensation, exactly what they wished for. That alone would make the tale a classic, but the story gets worse. A week after the funeral, Mrs. White, broken by grief, suddenly realizes they still have 2 wishes left. She begs her husband to use the paw and wish Herbert back to life. Reluctantly, he does so, despite great unease at the thought of summoning his son's mutilated and decomposing body. He knows exactly what they are asking to come back. Still, he makes the wish. Later that night, there is a knock at the door. Mrs. White is ecstatic. She rushes to the door, fumbling with the locks, desperate to see her son again. But Mr. White is horrified because he understands that whatever is outside may technically be Herbert, but not the Herbert they know and loved. As his wife struggles to open the door, he makes the 3rd wish. The knocking stops. The door opens, and there is no one there. Come and See. Come and See is one of those great movies you'll only watch once, because by the end of it, the horror on your face starts matching the protagonists. The film follows Flyora, a Belarusian teenager who excitedly plays war, while the Great Patriotic War is being fought all around him. He digs up an old rifle from the sand and dreams of joining the partisans and becoming some kind of hero. Unfortunately, doing that also attracts German reconnaissance planes, which is not exactly a good omen for his village. The village elder warns him of digging up the rifle, but Flyora's just playing, you know? What bad could come out of it? When he comes home, Flyora is picked up by the partisans, despite his mother's wishes. And from there, the film becomes a descent into hell, where Flyora experiences bombings, starvation, and gets dragged through one atrocity after another. Almost as soon as he joined the partisans, they are attacked by German dive bombers in the forest. He flees with another teenager, the girl Glasha, and when they return to his village and finds it abandoned, he believes that the villagers are hiding on a nearby island across a bog. Sadly, they are not. Flyora just refuses to believe that his family is dead, even as the evidence is literally piled up behind his house. They find some survivors from the village, including the elder, now nearly burnt to a crisp, who repeats his warning about digging up the rifle. Flyora attempts to drown himself out of guilt by submerging his head in the bog, but Glasha and the villagers stop him. So we as viewers were pretty lucky not to see the first village massacre. We are not lucky enough to avoid the second one. Flyora stumbles into a village just as the Nazis and their collaborators round up the women, children, and the elderly, forcing them into a wooden church. The people inside scream, while the soldiers outside drinks and laughs, and treat the whole thing like a fun field trip. Then, they set the church on fire. It is one of the most sickening scenes ever put on film. And Flyora survives it, which is not a mercy, as we see the horrors taking its toll on the young man, who now looks ancient. And in the final scene, Flyora finds a portrait of Hitler lying in the mud and unloads his rifle into it. As he fires, archival footage of Hitler's life plays in reverse, as if Flyora is trying to shoot history itself, undo the war and the massacres. But when the footage reaches Hitler as a baby in his mother's arms, Flyora stops. Even after everything he has endured, Flyora cannot bring himself to shoot Hitler as a child, even metaphorically. I guess that settles the baby Hitler time travel thought experiment. The Machinist. The Machinist follows Trevor Resnick, a factory worker who has not slept in a year. And it shows. He is basically a skeleton, his body wasting away, as his sleeplessness turns him into a paranoid loner. Trevor still goes to work, but his inattention causes a horrific accident, as he is distracted by a strange coworker named Ivan. A man loses his arm, and Trevor's coworkers turn against him. But when Trevor asks about Ivan, nobody knows who he is. And as Trevor's insomnia continues, mysterious post-it notes appear on his fridge, forming a game of hangman, which would be enough to make anyone paranoid. Meanwhile, Trevor eats at an airport diner every night, and he tries to establish a relationship with Maria, the waitress. She has a young son named Nicholas, and for a while, they seem like the only warm things left in Trevor's life. But even that doesn't go too well for him. Trevor takes Nicholas on a dark ride at an amusement park, only for the ride to become increasingly disturbing until Nicholas has a seizure. Trevor becomes convinced that Ivan and everyone around him are part of some plot to drive him insane, and things just keeps getting stranger. He finds a photograph of one of his coworkers fishing with none other than Ivan. Gotcha. So he must exist, right? Trevor tries to trace Ivan's license plate, only to learn that the car is registered to Trevor himself, a car he reported totaled a year earlier. Then his world breaks open completely. He finds out that the man in the fishing photo is not Ivan, it's himself, and the people at the diner tells him Maria has never worked there. The random waitress says that she has served Trevor every day for a year, and he spoke so little she thought he was mute. Then, Trevor sees Ivan take Nicholas into his apartment. Panicking, he believes Ivan has killed the boy, so he attacks Ivan, kills him, and rolls the body into a carpet. But when he tries to dispose of it, the carpet is empty. Ivan appears again, alive and laughing. And finally, Trevor remembers. 1 year earlier, Trevor was driving, and as he looked away from the road for a second, he hit a young boy, Nicholas. And the mother running to the little crushed body was Maria, and Trevor just cowardly fled the scene. Ivan was never real. He was a personification of Trevor's guilt. Maria and Nicholas were hallucinations, fragments from the accident, reshaped into a fantasy where Trevor could be forgiven. The creepy hangman game was Trevor, subconsciously spelling out the word he could not face. Killer. Trevor, now realizing what he has done, finally stops running. He goes to the police station and confesses. The officers lead him to a cell, and there, for the first time in a year, Trevor sleeps. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas. The Boy in the Striped Pajamas is a story about childhood innocence, about how friendship can grow under the hardest circumstances. It's also a movie about the Holocaust, so, yeah, it, does not end well. Based on the novel by John Boyne, the film follows Bruno, the young son of a Nazi officer, who is forced to move with his family from Berlin to the countryside when his father is promoted. Bruno hates the new house immediately. It's isolated, and there are no other children around. From his bedroom window, he sees what he thinks is a farm full of people wearing striped pajamas. But it's not a farm. It's a concentration camp. But Bruno is too young to understand that, and that is the entire tragedy of the film. He sees fences, guards, misery, and starvation, and still cannot grasp what he is really looking at. To him, it is just a strange place where the people seem very bad at farming. Eventually, while sneaking beyond the house, Bruno meets Schmoll, a Jewish boy his own age, imprisoned on the other side of the fence. The two become friends. Schmoll doesn't really understand what's going on either, but he knows that he's hungry. So Bruno brings him food, and they sit by the barbed wire and talk. Two little boys separated by one of the most monstrous systems ever created, yet still innocent enough to simply be children. And that innocence is what makes the ending so devastating. Near the end, Bruno learns that Schmoll's father has disappeared inside the camp. Wanting to help, Bruno digs under the fence, puts on a set of striped clothes, and enters the camp. The two boys search together in the rain, hand in hand, until they are swept up with a crowd of prisoners and herded into a gas chamber. And there is no rescue. The machinery of extermination does not stop, simply because this time it has grabbed the wrong child. The machine simply doesn't care. By the time Bruno's family realizes where he has gone, it's already too late. Bruno's father helped build a system that exterminates other people's children, and in the end, it takes his own too. AI, artificial intelligence. AI, artificial intelligence, is what happens when you take Pinocchio, add robots, abandonment trauma, and 2,000 years of existential horror. In the future, climate collapse has flooded the coasts. Humanity is declining, and robots called mechas are everywhere. Into this lovely world comes David, a prototype robot child designed only to love. And once activated, his love is permanent. He is given to Monica and Henry Swinton, whose real son Martin is in suspended animation after a serious illness. Initially, Monica is quite uncomfortable with David, but eventually she activates David's imprinting. And that seals his fate, because once activated, David loves Monica completely and forever. She becomes his whole world. Then, Martin unexpectedly recovers and comes home. And unlike David, Martin is a real child, which means that he is also kind of a little shit. He manipulates David, humiliates him, and pushes him into a series of incidents that convince Monica and Henry that David is dangerous. So, Monica takes him out into the woods and abandons him like a dog. Damn, that's just cold. From that point on, the film becomes a mechanical nightmare version of Pinocchio. David clings to one insane hope. If he can find the blue fairy and become a real boy, Monica will love him again. He travels through the ruins of the world with a robotic teddy bear and a robotic gigolo chasing a fairy tale. Eventually, he even meets his creator, Professor Hobby, who reveals the cruel truth. David is not special. He is just the first successful model in a production line of identical artificial children. Disheartened by his lost sense of individuality, David jumps from a skyscraper into the ocean. Luckily, he is saved by his friends, and on the bottom of the ocean, they find a statue that resembles the blue fairy. They become stuck, and David prays to the fairy to make him real until his power runs out. And then the movie casually jumps 2,000 years ahead in the future. Humanity is extinct. The Earth is now ruled by highly advanced mechas, and these strange and elegant beings are trying to understand the long-dead humans who created them. And what did they find as humanity's legacy? David, a machine child built to love with total sincerity, who spent millennia waiting for a mother who abandoned him. So, out of mercy, they bestow him one final gift. Using a lock of Monica's hair, they recreate a clone of her that can only last for one single day. So David finally gets his one perfect day with his mother, and she tells him she loves him, and he lies beside her as she falls asleep forever, and the film ends. What a cute ending, right? Wrong. You realize what just happened, right? David never became real. He never got a real human life. He never got the authentic love he spent his existence searching for. What he gets instead is an artificial reconstruction granted by beings who pity him. The final witness to humanity is a child they build to love them, whom they just threw away. Dead Space. Physicist Enrico Fermi once asked a simple question. Where is everybody? If intelligent life is common, and if the universe is old, then the stars should be crowded, and there should be signs of them, signals, alien star empires, ruins, something, anything. But there is nothing. The Dead Space universe gives a horrifying answer. They're all gone because something eats them. And humanity is walking the same path to the slaughterhouse that millions of civilizations walked before them. By the 23rd century, humanity is a species on life support. Earth is a stripped husk, emptied of resources. We have become cosmic locusts, using massive planet cracker ships to tear planets apart just to feed the economy. But overpopulation and the insufficient planet cracker output results in resource wars and a general societal collapse. We're a species looking for a miracle. Then we found the markers. At first, they look like our salvation, a source of free and limitless energy, but it's a trap. The markers don't just provide power, they are semi-sentient, and they broadcast a signal that functions as an intelligence trap. To the brilliant, the scientists and engineers, the marker imprints blueprints directly into their minds, forcing them to build more markers. To the weaker-minded, however, the signal brings dementia and paranoia, and they end up hurting themselves or others, thus setting the stage for the necromorph infection. Suddenly, the dead no longer stays dead. Necromorphs are reanimated corpses and other dead tissue reshaped into horrific new forms, built of bone and rotting flesh. Their sole purpose is to make more corpses to convert and spread the infection. The Church of Unitology believe that the necromorphs are heralds of humanity's ascension. But they are not. They are the bane of humanity, of all life. The series follows Isaac Clarke, an engineer who boards the planet cracker, USG Ishimura. After it goes silent, it turns out that the entire crew has all been turned into necromorphs. But luckily, Clarke survives the encounter. He manages to destroy these ungodly creatures and cleanse the station. But to his horror, he learns that the necromorphs are merely the larvae. Once a planet is sufficiently infected, convergence begins. The marker pulls every ounce of necrotic biomass into the sky and fuse it together in a planetary-scale meatball to form a brethren moon. Oh, and then the moon absorbs any leftover life, as well as some of the planetary crust, before joining his brothers. These planet-sized entities are responsible for the emptiness of the universe. They use entire civilizations as breeding grounds, continuing the cycle, until they have consumed every living thing in the universe. And again, Isaac stops this cycle. He manages to kill a brethren moon, and Isaac escapes and heads back to Earth, desperate to warn everyone about these creatures. But he's too late. When he returns to Earth, it's already surrounded by brethren moons. The things that emptied the universe have found humanity's home, and Isaac returns just in time to see the apocalypse waiting for him. Death of a Salesman. It doesn't take a genius to guess that Arthur Miller's stage play, Death of a Salesman, doesn't end too well for the salesman. Willy Loman is an aging, unsuccessful salesman, clinging to a belief that being well-liked is more important than hard work, being honest, or be happy. What makes Willy so painful to watch is that he's spent a lifetime chasing the American dream, and he just cannot accept being ordinary. He insists that his name means something, that success is just around the corner, while reality proves otherwise. As his failures pile up, his mind begins to slip. The play becomes a blur of memories and fantasies because the present is too humiliating to face. This delusion poisoned his sons, Biff and Happy. Willy raised them to be hotshots, valuing personality over hard work, only to watch them become hollow, unsuccessful adults. In their final explosive argument, Biff literally screams at Willy, "I'm a dime of a dozen, and so are you." He's trying to liberate them both from the crushing weight of trying to be extraordinary. But Willy won't or can't listen. To admit that Biff is a failure would be to admit that his own philosophy was wrong. It would mean that Willy himself is a failure. Instead of hearing his son's plea, Willy's fractured mind understands Biff's tears as a sign of forgiveness. And then Willy has his final hallucination. He dreams up his long-dead brother, Ben, who walked into the jungle and came out rich. And Ben approves of Willy's planned final sale, that he is worth more dead than alive. He has a $20,000 life insurance policy, And in his fractured logic, ending his life is the only way to finally provide for his family. And Biff would be thunderstruck by seeing how well attended Willie's funeral is, and Biff would use some of the money to start his own business. The irony is devastating. The very day they bury him, his wife Linda makes the final mortgage payment. She stands over his grave and says, "I made the last payment on the house today, and there'll be nobody home." Willie Loman sold his life for a commission he'd never see, to pay for a house he finally owned, for a son who didn't want his dream, chasing a well-liked funeral where nobody showed up. Shadow of the Colossus. Shadow of the Colossus is a game about slaying gigantic monsters, but also about love, grief, and the consequences of refusing to let the dead stay dead. You play as Wander, a young man who rides into a forbidden land on his horse, Agro, carrying the body of a girl named Mono. She has been sacrificed because of her cursed fate, and Wander is so desperate to bring her back that he steals an ancient sword and makes a deal with a mysterious entity called Dorman. Dorman will revive Mono. But first, Wander has to kill 16 Colossi scattered across the land. At first, this sounds like a classic video game setup. Giant monsters and epic battles. Just you and your horse against impossible odds. But the game slowly makes something very clear. The Colossi are not evil. Most of them are just ancient beings minding their own business until Wander shows up and starts stabbing them to death. So every victory feels wrong, and every time a Colossus dies, black tendrils shoot into Wander's body. He becomes paler, weaker, and less human. The miracle he wants is clearly costing him everything. Meanwhile, Lord Ammon and his men are pursuing Wander because they know exactly what he is doing, using forbidden power to unleash something that was sealed away for a reason. Then, just before the final Colossus, Wander loses Agro. As they race across a collapsing bridge, Agro throws Wander to safety, and the horse falls into the canyon below. It's the moment Wander loses the only loyal companion he had left. And yet, he still presses on. He kills the last Colossus, and Mono really does come back to life. So technically, he succeeds, but the price is himself. The Colossi were vessels holding Dorman's scattered essence, and by killing them, Wander has spent the entire game rebuilding that dark power inside his own body. Dorman now fully possesses him, transforming him into a giant shadow creature, only to have Lord Ammon and his priest seal him away immediately. In the end, Agro limps back in, and Mono and the horse finds a horned infant left behind in the shrine. Wander reborn, but cursed, forever branded for his crimes. You did it, you mad lad. You finished the whole video. Let me know in the comments which ending you think is the darkest and why. You can also click on my head to subscribe for more videos, or click the next one if you somehow still want more of this. Thanks for watching. Cheers.